So the Fed has their monetary policy tools. Remember, that was the required reserve ratio, changing the discount rate, the buying and selling of government securities, and they use that to change the money supply. And by changing the money supply, they can affect or they can change or impact the aggregate demand of an economy of all the goods and services. And by changing that aggregate demand, they can change the equilibrium of the national product market. And by changing that, they're going to be trying to move us closer to full employment, get us out of an inflationary or a recessionary gap. So the Fed has those tools. Well, the U.S. government has fiscal policy tools as well that they employ at times to try and adjust the macroeconomy and get us out of a recessionary or an inflationary gap. So let's dive into what is fiscal policy? So what if the fiscal policy is the act of changing government spending or taxes to achieve specific policy goals. And these goals are promoting growth and stability. So this is whenever the federal government is going to be changing the amount that they spend. So they're going to be changing those federal expenditures, or they're going to be changing the federal receipts, the amount that they receive in taxes. They're going to be changing that in order to try and achieve both promote growth within an economy and achieve stability within the economy as well from a financial and a macroeconomic standpoint. So there are two distinct aspects or two distinct categories of fiscal policy. The first one is known as this automatic fiscal policy. Well, what is automatic fiscal policy? Automatic fiscal policies are policies that take effect without an explicit action by the president or Congress. These are things that are kind of already in the back burner, that are already running, that are kind of just going. And if things get too far out of line in the economy, these automatic fiscal policies automatically kick in without needing Congress approval or the presidential approval, because it's already in there. It doesn't need explicit action by the president or Congress. The other type of fiscal policy is discretionary fiscal policy or discretionary fiscal policy instruments. Discretionary fiscal policy instruments are those that actually require legislative or executive branches. So legislative, that's your Congress, or executive, the branch of the president. So it basically takes either the Congress or the president to take explicit policy actions that would not have otherwise occurred or occurred otherwise. So these are different policy tools, fiscal policy instruments that were not supposed to happen, or they wouldn't have happened automatically. It took Congress or the president to set these in place. They would not have happened otherwise. They had to be set in place by the president or Congress. And we assume that the goals of fiscal policy is to eliminate inflationary or recessionary gap. So what's the purpose of fiscal policy? Well, we said it's to promote growth and stability, but it's also to eliminate inflationary and recessionary gaps. We want to reduce or get rid of those inflationary or recessionary gaps, the same reason that we're using those monetary policies set forth by the Fed. So let's dive into what are automatic fiscal policies then. Remember, these are these policies that take effect without explicit action by the president or Congress. These are things that are already set in place. They just kind of automatically happen. So the act is built-in stabilizers. So a good analogy is, imagine that there's a punch bowl at a party. So, and let's say that the party is picking up steam. Everybody's starting to get a little bit too excited and getting a little too wild. So the way that you kind of offset that is you water down the punch bowl. So if the party suddenly starts picking up steam and getting a little bit out of hand, then the punch bowl is automatically watered down right away. So it's meant to do that to kind of dilute the economy, or if the punch bowl is the economy, we're trying to dilute it. We're trying to bring back some of its effects, some of its excitable aspects of it, and it's supposed to bring down the theme of the party, or the tone of the party. Versus if you get into a situation, well, now you're at that party and you watered down the punch bowl, but a little too much, and it starts getting boring. Now the party is moving too slow. People are heading home. It's getting a little too boring. well, then it automatically, there's something that will gauge that and will automatically spike the punch bowl to bring it back up. So what it does in the economy, these automatic fiscal policies, is if the economy is growing and it's growing too fast and it's going too far and we're worried about too much inflation, we have this inflationary gap, we're worried about that, then these automatic fiscal policies are automatically going to kick in. They're going to start coming into play. Versus if the economy is in a recession and it's in a dip, it's starting to move too slowly, these automatic fiscal policies are going to do things that will automatically stimulate the economy to bring it up. So it's meant to try and move it back to full employment. The idea behind these automatic fiscal policies is move the economy back to full employment without ever actually having to enact a policy or enact some kind of discretionary fiscal policy. It's supposed to automatically do that. Well, one of those automatic fiscal policies is actually the progressive income tax. So in the United States, we have a progressive income tax. Basically, the lower your income is, the smaller a percentage that you receive in taxes or that you have to pay in taxes. So for example, if you are below a certain threshold, you might only have to pay 10% of your taxable income, versus if you are in a range of, say, making $1 million a year in income, you might have to be paying 40-50% of your taxable income in taxes, or 30-40%, probably on average about 25 or 30-40% in that case. So those who make less, well, they don't have to pay as much as a percentage wise. Those who make more will have to pay a higher percentage of their income. So that's essentially what a progressive tax is. And I would encourage you to go and look up what a progressive tax if you don't already know what it is, because we do have that here in the United States. So a progressive income tax, whenever the economy goes up and we're in a boom economy, and the marginal tax rates will actually increase, because we have these individuals that are moving up in these tax brackets and they're having to pay a higher percentage as they move up the tax brackets. So the marginal tax rate is actually going to increase. So the aggregate demand, well, what's going on? So we have a higher income, so we're paying more in taxes. So now our disposable income, remember our income minus taxes, our disposable income is not as high as what it would have been. So the aggregate demand is now lower than if families were faced with a flat tax rate, tax at a flat rate. Basically, they're having to pay more in taxes as they make more, and it's going to be lowering their overall disposable income. If they don't have as much disposable income, they can't buy as much stuff, lowering that aggregate demand and hopefully offsetting possible inflation that typically comes in a boom economy. The other aspect is, well, what if we're in a slowing economy? What if the economy is heading into a recession? What if it's slowing down? Well, what happens then? Well, if we're going into a slowing economy, a recessionary economy, or we're in one right now, people are naturally making less. And if they're making less income is going to fall. Their marginal tax rates fall because now they're in that lower bracket and they're paying less per dollar, so their marginal tax rates fall. So now their disposable income has gone up because they're paying less in taxes per dollar. Their disposable income would actually not fall as much as if they were faced with a flat tax rate. So think about it this way. What if the flat tax rate was 20% and we're facing in a recessionary economy, and instead of this individual paying 20% in taxes, now with the progressive tax rate, because they fall into a lower bracket, maybe they're only paying 10%. So now they've got basically 10% more over and above what they should have in terms of disposable income. They have more disposable income. They're buying more stuff. They're buying more stuff. It stimulates the economy. Versus on the other hand, if we're going into a boom economy with this progressive tax rate and it's a flat tax of 20%, but now they're making more. So with the progressive tax, they're having to pay more for that additional money that they made versus just a flat tax rate of 20%. Maybe now the marginal tax rate is 40%, so they're paying 40% of all of their in taxes. So now they have less disposable income to spend, so they spend less, and it brings back the economy, slows it down. But the amazing thing about this is, with the progressive tax rate, is it doesn't have to take congressional approval or presidential approval. These have already been set in place. They're automatic. If the economy starts going up too fast and the incomes rise, then the progressive tax rate kicks in to start reducing that disposable income, reducing that aggregate demand. Versus in a slowing down economy, and incomes fall, tax rates actually fall, marginal tax rates fall to where people now have more money than what they would have spent. So because they have more money, they're going to be buying more, hopefully increasing that aggregate demand.